I want to talk about San Francisco's defense because their defensive front about 2 years ago took over the league. And then they had a bunch of injuries, and now Bosa's healthy and DJ Johnston. And I watched them this weekend, and I watched them against the Rams this year. And I got to tell you, Takeo, they look like that defensive line 2 years ago. Armstead is playing well. I don't love their corners, but they gave Aaron Rodgers, you could tell, he wanted to get rid of that ball fast. You could see that, right?
Yeah, and you talked about it. When you look at the defensive front, Nick Bosa coming off of an ACL tear earlier from last year, but he has been exceptional. You look at Samson Ekubon. He's been playing very well. Jordan Willis. You look at collectively across the board, in particular, Eric Armstead. Since they moved him to that 3 technique, now he's rushing consistently over guards. It's been a matchup. And this dude has been dominant over the last 6 weeks of the NFL season. You can't block him one-on-one. And they do a great job. And it's not just one or two guys. They do a great job collectively by rotating guys in and out. And guys raise their level of play when they get the one-on-one blocks.
Takeo, it's interesting. There's a different culture with Kyle Shanahan. It's a physical. Practices are more physical. He demands, he wants to get and play it in the phone booth. He wants physical football. The Rams like to spread you out. They got Cooper Kupp out here. They sometimes go no back sets. So it's an interesting matchup between the Rams and the Niners. It is two kind of different football cultures, some similarities. But why do you think the Niners have had so much success against Sean McVay?
Well, I said it all the time, and I say it on my BTM podcast is, listen, Kyle Shanahan, he taught all of his assistant coaches everything that they knew, but he did not teach them everything that he knew. And with that, the schematics, the game planning, understanding that, look, let's go back to the game when they played the Rams during the regular season. When they played that football game, he did such a great job of understanding and knowing we got to run the football. And if it takes 40 times for us to run the football, that's exactly what we're going to do. They did not get discouraged. He talks about all the time, we may not only get 2 or 3 yards here. We may lose a yard or 2 here. But we know eventually if we keep pounding, they will continue to crease the teams and be able to get those big yards runs.
Yeah. DeMeco Ryans defense as well. Good for him. Takes over for Robert Saleh, and they have played absolutely great football, more impressively down the stretch post-Thanksgiving, which tells you he's a good teacher, so he's going to get some opportunities. So Cincinnati has not been a winning culture for a long time. And sometimes you just need a guy to walk in a building and change a culture. And Burrow is confident and a little cocky, but I find it very likable. I never think he's unlikable. There's a swagger about him, but it's a fun swagger. It's, hey, everybody, jump on board. Are you even surprised they went to Tennessee and won?
I picked him. I picked him before this week's game. And the reason why, I remember the 49ers playing the Tennessee Titans, and I truly had an opportunity to look at 4 games of the Tennessee Titans. And the things that I saw, they didn't have an explosive offense. The thing that they did well was they were not going to beat themselves. They were going to rush the football effectively, and they were going to play a brand of football that was going to be very efficient. And so when I looked at it and I saw the Bengals going in, the Tennessee Titans defensive backs, they gave up the number 1 receiving yards, the number 1 touchdowns given up by wide receivers. So I knew that matchup right there alone was going to be very favorable for the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm going to tell you the reason why they were able to win that game defensively. You got to give a big shout out to that defensive unit of the Bengals. They held the Tennessee Titans 1 for 8 on 3rd down.
Yeah.
Walked out of there with 3 interceptions. And now you have Jamar Chase. He's continuing to fill up the stat sheet. Another 100-yard performance. These guys are going to give problems for a long time. But the next week, when we look at the next matchup going up against the Kansas City Chiefs, I got to do my homework. I can't go ahead and throw everything in yet. But I like this matchup, and I do not anticipate or expect for the Bengals to go in there and get blown out. They're going to come in there with Joe Burrow, with that confidence that he has. As long as you have him, he's going to make a difference and spread the ball around and score points.
Yeah, if any team could have caved this weekend, it was the Bengals. They got sacked. They were a little overwhelmed up front offensive line, and Green Bay played fearful in the second half. Cincinnati could have and didn't, and I think that's just it speaks to the personality and kind of the confidence of Joe Burrow. Now, I do want to talk about this. As I watched Mahomes and Josh Allen carve up the defense, I thought losing Honey Badger really hurt Kansas City in the middle. I think he's the most instinctive player arguably in the league. The guy is just a magnet for the ball, and without him, it's not the same defense. But I look at the game now in the middle of the field. When these quarterbacks can run around and you can't hit them, I mean, you retired at the right time, because when you watch this game now, Josh Allen is 6'6". He can run, slide right in front of you, Takeo, and you can't touch him. I feel like the game is almost unstoppable if you get the right quarterback. What do you see?
I mean, it's a prime example of what you're seeing in the National Football League. Teams are not going out getting quarterbacks who can stand in the pocket and look like the Statue of Liberty while trying to deliver the ball. They got to go out and get quarterbacks that are mobile. We saw that with Josh Allen. We saw that with Patrick Mahomes. And the thing about it, when you talk about how the league has changed, and in particular Josh Allen, it's disappointing to see he really didn't get an opportunity. But if you look at his last two playoff games, the Buffalo Bills, they were committed to running the football better. And the more and more I looked at them, how did they do that? By having Josh Allen to be able to run the football, having pre-called runs, not scrambles. And he was averaging over the last two wins that they had 8 yards a carry. And that's very hard for a defensive unit, especially when you're not counting on him to run the football in certain inopportune times.
Yeah. Takeo Spikes, by the way, he has a podcast that's out right now. Takeo Spikes Presents Behind the Mask. You know, I think it's interesting. Jimmy Garoppolo's not the most artistic. He doesn't have the big arm. He doesn't run around like Mahomes. But I will say this about Jimmy Garoppolo. The players love him. I watch those guys around him, Takeo, and he's one of the guys. Whatever that is, it is. That's what I see it. You don't always get the greatest quarterback, but there is something about Garoppolo that is infectious around his teammates. Do you see it?
Yeah, I see the same thing. At the end of the day, look where they are. This is the second time this team has been in the NFC Championship game in a 3-year time period. And that ain't by accident. These guys play for Jimmy G. Now, would we all like to see Jimmy G be the type of quarterback that we just raved about, talking about Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes? It would be unfair. You wouldn't even have to play the Super Bowl if the 49ers had a quarterback like that. But the reality of it is these guys play for him. Deebo Samuel. You look at Elijah Mitchell. You look at George Kittle. These guys believe in him, and that's what makes make not only this team so good, but it makes the key players step up in big opportune times. And the thing that Jimmy G brings to the table is this. We joke about it, in our own circles, like, okay, he's going to give you what he needs to give you within the first 3 quarters. But when you need Jimmy G to step up late in the fourth quarter and take his team down, whether or not to score a touchdown or whether or not to kick a field goal, he does that. You think about the teams who are still in the playoffs right now, the Cincinnati Bengals. They won against the Cincinnati Bengals in Cincinnati in overtime due to the fact that Jimmy G took his team down to score.
Yep.
Like, that was huge. And he's done that several times. I think about him playing against the Los Angeles Rams. What did he do? They were down 17-0. He brought the team back. So he is exactly what they need. They have bought into Jimmy G. Jimmy G has bought into all of the exotic toys, really talking about Kittle and Deebo Samuel. And these guys are making plays week in and week out. And it's going to be exciting to see what they do against the Rams. They're going for 7, and I like this matchup. I really like the 49ers going into this matchup.
Takeo Spikes Presents Behind the Mask. As always, great seeing you. Continued success. Also works for NBC Sports in the Bay Area. Our friends up there. Thanks, Takeo. Appreciate it.
Right on.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.